Hello, Brian Osborne.
Hello, Pete Bissonette. How are you?
I am fantastic. Hey, I decorated for the occasion.
I see that. I'm very impressed. Me too.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
that's right. That's right. Exactly. Although I actually learned how to do this to my dog Josie back when she used to be alive, because I would come home from the office and she'd run through the house and bring me every toy she was playing with all day and drop them at my feet. So,
right.
Brian, this is what we've been playing with the last 13 weeks.
It looks fantastic. And I have to say, right off the bat, I am so impressed with everybody that stuck with it from beginning to end. I mean, it's just amazing. One of the things that I'm constantly telling students is, it's so easy to get distracted, sidetracked, life happens, right? So there are always good reasons to not do your practices. But boy, for the people that stick with it and just continue to do it, no matter how much, even just imbibing a small amount every day, the benefits, I mean, you just can't, I don't know, it comes back to you in so many ways in your life to help you out. So I feel like that's a big thing, that people are sticking with it, and that's great. I think the benefits will come about in now and in the future. So congratulations for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And as far as now and in the future, that's one of the things that we want to talk about too today is where do we go from here with our aura seeing skills? But first, Brian, we got a couple dozen questions. Can we get right
Sure.
into the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the first one is, I've come to enjoy all of the charts. On the eye movement chart, why are some of the dots black and others gray?
Ah, so, and I'm guessing that's from when they're practicing that the dots are actually turning gray. There's a funny thing. I mean, we do a lot of these techniques, and a lot of times the reason we use black and white isn't just because, that's all they had was black and white. Obviously, they had other colors to work with these. So, but there's a general, we can almost call it, in a weird way, almost like an archetype in our minds, that black generally refers to, chaos, white generally refers to order. And so there's always that dichotomy. And when we work with charts that are black and white and something starts to turn gray, we think that that's actually, we're looking for a balance point, and where you have a nice balance of both chaos and order. Like when we look at a Taiji symbol, right? The yin and yang, which is what most people look at, and it has a dot of the white and the black and a black dot in the white, right? But that's that rotation of chaos and order, right? And the Taoists actually believe that the proper place for a human being is to walk that line, that curvy line in the center, right? So if you have too much order, your life is boring and awful, right? Because you just know everything that's going to happen. It's just this rote sort of droning through life. But if you're in too much chaos, that can be terrifying. So the idea is that you want to have, and for each person, it's a little bit different, right? And different for, different times in our lives as well. And so you want to have just that right balance of chaos and order, so that unpredictability and, constancy that order brings. But when we start to do that and we try to balance that within ourselves, a lot of times, like an old traditional thing would be like think of a checkerboard, but black and white squares instead of black and red squares. We use that on a regular basis. Each student would have to make up their own, and they gaze at it using the same gazing method that you use for aura seeing. And the idea is that as you do that, slowly but surely in the gazing, that the dots, or the squares in this case, they start to turn gray. And when they can make a whole field of gray, that they know that, both of those elements within their body are balanced. So that, nutritive is that, it's a weird thing, right? The nutritive part is more of that chaos, and that energy part is more of that movement and order. So keeping things in balance. So really, when it goes to gray, we're thinking that things are pretty well balanced. It's not something that we generally think of with that eye movement chart, but it could be thought of that way with any of the black and white charts.
Well, I tell you, of all the answers I thought you were going to give, that was not one. Very cool. Thank you for that. Okay, so by the end of the 90 days, the various components of the Kinja diagrams became 3D, almost as if they were coming alive. Comments?
That's true. Like many pictogram types of written language, in some ways, the more archaic, the better. They really did believe that these weren't just representations of a way to produce words. That came later. A lot of them, especially in these Chinese glyphs and some of their more ancient writing, not the more modern Mandarin, but like ancient cloud script and things that are only used in the monastery. Also, in a more modern term, like the letters in the Jewish alphabet, right? So those are all pictographs, and when we use them, they think that they actually there's a certain product of energy that's coming through from the one, or God, or the universe, is coming through those diagrams. And so it sort of rends down, or like a transformer, it takes something of a energy level that's so high that we wouldn't be able to withstand it normally, and brings it into us in a way that's has a frame around it so that we can utilize it in the way that the pictogram actually designates. So yeah, so I mean, that's definitely one of those things. I mean, it's not something we really went into in the Oracene course, but when I did my training, that was a great thing, because we would actually have to visualize those diagrams, the Kinjas coming out, being 3D, being able to project them in our minds, even with eyes open, in sort of floating in space. And so, yeah, that 3D, it just gives it more substance, I'd say,
Cool. Any idea why I found seeing auras on people and plants easier than pets?
People and plants more than pets. Well, pets are funny, right? I mean, for one thing, they don't tend to stay still very often, unless they're sleeping when you're doing it. So that movement can be a little distracting. And I find that too, different animals, well, not that they're trying to do it, but the aura that's projected from them varies a lot more than plants or people. And like, if you look at the difference, if animals is your thing, like I have a few students that are veterinarians, and yeah, a couple that are like they do equestrian horses for therapy, right? Therapy horses. And so they do a lot of this, right? And each one seems to be slightly different. And the other thing is, like, if animals are a big thing for you, then I would say, compare, let's say the most basic for us would be cats and dogs. The funny thing, if we know from personal history, like when you're not feeling well, cats love to be on you, right? I mean, I've had so many people tell me, I mean, I'm not particularly a cat person, but they tell me, oh, if I had a sore throat, I would wake up and my cat's like on my throat purring, right? And cats tend to be natural mulchers of, like, I don't want to call it negative energy, but energy that's erratic in your body. And so dogs tend not to like that very much. They like it when, you're in good shape and they want to be around you. And so they have these two different tendencies. And so, the auras that they project are slightly different. So I would just say keep at it, sort of. And I would even say, if you're trying to really deal with your pet, but it's not coming through as cleanly, do a combination. So do a person or plant first, and then immediately switch to the animal, and then go back, and then go back. So you're sort of comparing back and forth. The thing that is easy for you, that momentum of seeing will actually transfer over to the one that's a little bit more difficult or a little harder to visualize. So I find that there are animals' auras, like my dogs, a lot of times it seems that their aura is a little bit more compressed around them too. So sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult to sort of get in there and get a little bit more understanding of what it is. You can see it, but it seems to be a little bit closer.
Okay, thank you. I had great progress through the 90 days. I understand that seeing auras is part conditioning the eyes to see subtle variations and to open the third eye. Is there a way to force open the third eye, or how can I get better results with opening the third eye?
Can you force it? Yeah, but you don't want to. That's probably not a good idea. It would be similar to like when I hear people talk about spontaneous Kundalini opening or whatever, and it's actually become such a condition because we have so much more yoga in the country now than we ever did. We actually have a code, believe it or not, in medicine for that, for people who have had, conditions come on from that experience. And so it can be pretty traumatizing when you're just thrust into something. And so I wouldn't force the third eye. I would say that in my experience, people have temporary, let's say spontaneous third eye openings when they do things like plant medicine, so mostly we hear about things like ayahuasca or psilocybin or things like that. Those things have a very strong tendency to raise your vibrational level to a place where one of the most common experiences is to see colors around things, see auras, even see auras, or in a way, auras or colors around sound, right? So like, especially with really um, experienced ayahuasqueros, and when we look at people doing that and they see it, they sing these songs and they whistle these songs, and when they whistle, other people in the group can actually see the color that a particular tone is expressing, and they're all, they all see the same thing. And so it can be a pretty incredible experience, but it's not something that I would, use to force that, into opening. If it's open anyway. You're just trying to, like, I would rather think of it like when you're doing these exercises, you're just remembering, right? So you can all do it. Everybody can do it. But it's just a latent ability because it's been suppressed over a long time of saying that there's nothing there and we only see the objects in front of us. So once I give my mind the idea that there's some other perceptual state that I'm looking for and some other signal that I'm looking for, that already starts that process opening up. It's really that combination of, giving the command to your subconscious and having your mind express it, and having your brain, which we're not really sure even to this date really why we see it all to begin with, right? Just see in general. I mean, we all know eye and brain and all these things, but once we get to that point, we really don't have an idea how we perceive or see anyway. So it's not such a stretch to say, well, if we don't really know that and we don't know the mechanism, that concretely, then to open it up and say, oh, we'd like to see this other level of existence going on. And if you keep at it with these exercises, if you keep at it with different combinations of these exercises, you can switch it up, and you should switch it up. It'll just make it, more I think a more dense layering process, so that you're not just focusing on the one thing, but you're getting a big spread of everything. So it's going to come on in a much smoother, non-cathartic way, right? Where it's like just you're getting better and better and better at it every day that you're practicing.
Great, thank you. I understand the importance of fourfold breathing and the association with relaxed state. I come from a strong yogic background, and we developed a similar pattern. However, the exhalation was double the inhalation. So instead of fourfold, it was 4-4-8. Is it critical that I switch to 4-4-4? Um, I find it causes anxiety, which is detrimental to the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd have two answers for that. No, you don't have to be forced into anything, right? So, what we know from the fourfold breath is that it brings people into, looking at it from brain scans. We know that the fourfold breath actually brings you into balance, and balance for us at that basic level would be more of an alpha state. Sometimes, if you do it long enough, it'll kind of press into that theta wave, which is more like a deeper trance state. But we know that when you're doing, like there are a lot of combinations like that, like 4 inhalation, hold for 4, out for double, so 8, and then hold for 4 at the bottom. So when you do that, it tends to bring you a little deeper into that theta state. And there are lots of other combinations of that type of breathing as well. So it doesn't harm you to experiment a little bit with that and see, which ones work best for you. And my main thing with that is you really want to try to, like with all of these things, anchor that state into the body. So if 4-4-4, or if the fourfold breath is bringing on anxiety, is the anxiety coming from not doing it the way you learned in yoga, or is the anxiety from actually doing the fourfold breath? If it's more from the fourfold breath, then I wonder where that is in the body. And if it's a certain side of that fourfold breathing, the inhalation, the hold at the top, the exhalation, or the hold at the bottom, usually one of those territories is a little bit more tricky than the others for people. And that gives us information about that. And so if it's a certain one, it'll tell you, basically, that like the inhalation up is usually fire, across the top is air. It goes with the elements again. Down is water, and the bottom is earth. So it gives us an idea, like if it is one of those territories, or you can look at it with one of those territories, then I would do a little bit more work on that element. So, and I think most people, have had that, but they go through it. And so, and then finally it balances out, right? So, but if it's a concern, then I would look at it that way and see, identify which side it is, and then do a little bit more work with the elemental journey or something like that to, concentrate on that particular element and bring that into balance, and then go back and try it again and see how that goes. I think you'll find that it's better. If it is just, your mind sort of working with those two things, remember that you can work with lots of different systems. And so, and they all have their, place. So it's not like you're betraying one for another one, right? So that's, I would just put that out of my mind as far as that goes.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian, when looking at the star, I tend to get caught up in a gray star image inside the white star, or in a strong purple aura on the outside of the star. I haven't really seen the tunneling aspect or the column aspect. In other words, I don't feel as if I have seen it in the way I'm supposed to see it. So I feel I have seen some energy really more in an aura around the star. Any advice? And then also, please note, I've had some fascinating things with the Kinja diagrams, colors, and eye movement chart.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Sounds like you're moving along quite nicely. So, yeah, I mean, certain diagrams will have different effects on different people and different intensities. I would say keep going with that. Make sure that anytime something's not, let's say, I don't want to say not going well, but let's say it's not progressing the way you think, or you're getting not even stuck, but sort of focused on a certain area that's catching your attention. The first thing that I always do when things aren't moving is relax, really look to see when that happens, just sort of cue into your body and say like, okay, is there any place in my body that I feel like I'm holding tension? And if so, then just forget about the chart, relax that body part again, or relax even the whole thing, and then go back and try it again and see. I think you'll find that the correlation is pretty clear that usually it's tension in the body somewhere that causes those things to either get stuck in a certain territory or or certain elements become very distracting. So and then again, I'm just sort of acknowledging it and relaxing. And I think the first thing everybody should do when they do this is constantly move back into that relaxation. As soon as people do that, things start to expand and, kind of move forward from there. So.
Great, thank you. So I'm at a time in my life when the optometrist is recommending I get cataract surgery. Presently wear glasses. I am nearsighted. I have astigmatism with floaters in my eyes. I've faithfully done the 90-day challenge, missing only one day, including the meditations and gazing at all the different objects recommended in the course. And I have yet to see any colors. I know I'm benefiting from the course by strengthening my eye and exercising the muscles around my eyes. Is it possible cataract surgery will improve my ability to see auras or colors, or is it possible to have blockages in my body that are preventing me from taking the next step to actually see colors? What do you recommend?
Well, I think that 2 points. I mean, from medical view, I mean, it's good to get rid of the cataracts, right? Because that will, overwhelm you over time. So I think that's a good idea. Will it help you? It may help you just in that there's less distraction for you when you're doing your training, and that's fine. Again, as far as the colors, you should, when you sit down to do your practices, the first thing you should do, even before you relax, is state to yourself, to your subconscious, what you're there to do and what you expect for results. As soon as it knows and you keep confirming that, and as soon as you see any hint of color, it's like you want to close that feedback loop and say, yes, more just like that. And let that expand, relax, and let it go. And I think a lot of times that's just one of those really, subtle nuances that we don't always think about, because we're so focused on what we're doing. The other thing that you can do to just sort of strengthen the eye in some ways and exercise all of the muscles in the eye is just to make like you can even draw like a relatively large infinity symbol, so a number 8 on its side, right? And so put that up on the wall and just sort of stand back anywhere from 5 to 10 feet and just trace it with your eyes but not moving your head, right? So your eyes are just moving up and down and moving around. It's very similar to the eye movement chart, but this will actually, you don't have to think about a pattern or anything like that. You're just basically following that track. And that may just sort of relax the eye. You're going to build the muscles that are maybe not getting as much work, but you're going to relax the eye too when you're doing that. And then so do that for a minute or so, and then go and try your practices after that. That may help to kind of push you through that edge.
Thank you. How significantly is the intensity of colors you see? Frequently, especially when doing the color charts, I see auras that have a very light tint of color.
Yeah. Again, I think it's just experience over time. You'll see more and more of that. They're all very subtle in the beginning, to be honest with you. And they're usually, if people are healthy, they're going to be, translucent, right? So, and then you'll start to see flashes or shades, sort of iridescence that shimmer in certain areas of the aura. And so sometimes those can be a little bit more striking, but they're also translucent, right? It's not like you're going to have this color that you can't see through to the other person, to the person in front of you or to the object in front of you. So yeah, so I would just say keep up with that. Again, relaxation is the key, and telling your mind what it is that you're trying to perceive and what you want from your experience. And then again, as soon as you get any glimpses of that, you're like, ah, yep, that's it. More just like that.
Perfect. Thank you. I have better results when gazing at something with a solid background, like a candle before a wall rather than in front of a patterned bedspread. Is this typical as you're learning, or is that always true?
Yeah, that's pretty typical in the learning process. A lot of times, I know when we did the live Aura Scene course, the uh, we had people stand in front of a blank wall. And so it's a little bit easier when you have a solid wall behind you or behind the object that you're using. When we're working with plants, I usually put it behind a wall, in front of a wall on a stand with not a lot of other distractions around. After a while, it won't matter at all. You'll be able to see in a forest or, with things moving around it or whatever. So, but just in the beginning, it just makes it easier so that you get the feel of it. And again, when you get that feel, you'll be excited, you'll be whatever, you'll be concentrating, and it's really a good idea for any of those things. I know that I keep saying relax. That's always my first thing to make anything stronger, is to relax. The second thing is I'm always looking for that anchoring in my body. So, because it brings up a bit of emotion, right? When we're doing that. I mean, as much as we try to be objective, I mean, we are engaged in this and it is exciting. And that's not something to stomp on, right? It's like, but the idea how we can utilize that is, where are you feeling it in your body? Because, emotions are energy in motion, right? So that lets us know that energy is actually being transferred, right? Energy is moving. And so when we feel it in a certain area of your body, then, that's a good thing to anchor in, because we can actually, in a way, sort of work both ends to the middle, right? As I'm getting, let's say, just as an example, you're doing a chart and you can see really well doing the chart. Then you go to a person and it's a little less. And so when I do that, I'm thinking, okay, if I can identify in my body where I'm sensing my excitement or happiness or whatever it is on the chart, and I go to see the person, I might be slightly intimidated or, a little apprehensive about doing it. When I do it, if I can go back to that chart and identify that spot in my body, let's say it's in your chest, when you see it and everything's going great, I'm going to just cue into my body a little bit. And as I'm doing it, I'm going to sort of bring that sensation that I felt when I was doing it well up in my body. And by doing that, you're working both ends to the middle, right? It's going to help that energy accumulate and move, right? And so you'll sort of fall back into the situation, the relaxation part, that energy moving as you did with the chart in front of the person, right? So that's how I would sort of get past that point.
And Brian, a few people ask a question that's related to that, and that is, okay, fine, I can see an aura, but then as soon as I see the aura, I focus in on whatever I'm looking at. So I'm focusing on the person, I focus in on the plant, and I lose the aura.
Yeah, that's just practice with the gazing in general, right? Is that first we do it from a stationary position, usually sitting, so that you don't have too many other things going on. Like, then we get up and we stand and we do it. And then, after a time, can you stand even with a chart and move around, shift your weight from side to side, move a little bit forward, move a little bit back, and still keep your gazing, in the periphery, and still keep that the sensation, and still keep the visual there. So yeah, it's just a training process. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong there. It's just a matter of progression. That's all.
Question about the elements. So during all the meditations, I'm intensely associated with the fire and spirit. They're far more vivid than the other elements. How do I or should I resolve that imbalance? And do I consciously work to dampen these elements or raise the others?
I'd raise the others. So, and again, we can, a lot of times, we're always saying, you know, go with your strength. So a lot of times, if people have one particular element that's very strong for them, most people do, then I'll do that one first. And then let's say the next one, let's just give a solid example. So let's say fire is a good one for you. Maybe air isn't quite as good. So, but being one step down, so to speak, I'll do the fire first, and then right after that, I'll do the air. And so the momentum from you doing fire and that being so strong will transfer in some way to help air to come up to the level where fire was, right? And so, and then you just do that with each one that's, sort of lagging behind. And again, go back to the element meditation and work on those other elements to build them up. I wouldn't think so much about tamping down the others, more about that you can use the momentum from them to bring the others up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between luminescence and light shift? And how do you distinguish? And should I be concerned about distinguishing?
Not so much. I mean, when I think of luminescence, it's like the intensity of the glow or the source, if we want to think of it that way. If I think of it that way. And the light shift is more, the light shift helps with seeing more defined edges, which in a way will only come with practice, because it's very common, like for the people that they see the aura and then they snap back to the person, right, or whatever they're looking at. So it's the same thing can happen, exactly the same thing can happen when these other, let's say, more refined or nuanced factors come out. So you'll see this shimmer of a color moving across the aura field. And then all of a sudden, you're trying to focus on that and you lose the whole thing. So yeah, it's just a matter of being able to keep the whole thing intact and at the same time be able to observe something specific. And so that's where, again, working with the star, the light contrast, all of those things. It's just a matter of controlling your mind and conditioning your mind enough to not let anything that is, let's say, not startling, but unusual comes out, that you don't just, oh, I saw that, and then you snap back into, okay, normal view again, right? So it's, in some ways, I mean, we want to see those things. We want to be able to observe them. For, for certain people, it's going to be a little bit more, I don't want to say critical, but, more important than for others. If people are using it for, in their healing practice or something like that, they want to be able to sort of focus on certain territories within the whole aura. But they, you can't really get that separated from the aura. So it's just practice, really. In the end, it's being able to observe a number of things at the same time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always seen luminescence around mountains, ridge lines, power lines, etc.
Yep.
It terminates in a grayish field. Is that an aura?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, you're seeing the energy of the earth coming through whatever is planted in the earth. So things that are alive, are going to have a little bit more of that. In fact, I think, didn't we do like did we say, like, at some point, like twilight, you can look at the tree line, especially in the spring when things are coming back alive, like the tree line, and the trees are waking up. And, they're going to be much brighter in the spring than they would be any other time of the year. So, yeah. And with power lines, in some ways, electricity is alive, right? It's an aspect of fire. So Yeah, and the magnetic field that's around those cables as well. So they all produce, there is some type of life there, if you want to think of it that way. Mm-hmm.
Brian, how might I develop flat gazing? I get my best results when I flatten the gaze, but not sure how to get there quickly. It usually appears when I'm daydreaming, looking out, but thinking of other things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're distracting yourself in a way that is positive in this way, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm not identifying a single thing in my field of view, right? So that's the idea. And yeah, practice will make it quicker and quicker and quicker. Just like relaxation or anything else, literally it can be developed to a point where you can, turn it on and turn it off. It takes only a very short period of time to sort of get into that mode. Another reason to sort of anchor those sensations in your body, really identify them as much as you can, because that can help you move into those states much quicker.
I see colors when I close my eyes. It's most common and intense when meditating. Is this related to auras?
Yes and no. Let's see. When you meditate, depending on the meditation again, your aura is spinning faster, right? So as it spins faster, it expands to some degree. But that movement sort of intensifies the field and around you and within you, right? Because that's where it's being generated from. So, to have an internal view of that, I mean, some people will use that as a diagnostic tool for themselves instead of looking in a mirror or looking at a candle flame or those types of things. So, yeah, I mean, that's not unusual. People tell me all the time in my clinic, when they're getting treatment that, that when their eyes are closed, sometimes even when their eyes are open, that they see colors. And that's usually just a good indicator for me that the energy is moving, and, it's a pleasant thing. It's, but for me, it's more like it's literally an indication that the energy is moving.
So, Brian, Jetta Molly,
Oh
Seeds of
yeah,
Enlightenment.
sure.
So she doesn't see auras when she's looking at somebody. She closes her eyes and she sees the auras with her eyes closed.
Sure. Was there a question there?
No, it's just that, there's some people, and I know a couple other people the same way. They don't, when they're looking at someone, they don't see it with the eyes open, but the eyes closed, it comes to life.
Well, because a lot of times, well, certain people will need to be able to cancel out the distractions of what they're viewing. And so that's fine, because all aura seeing, I mean, we do all these exercises, we do everything, but remember, you're not actually seeing it with your eye, right? It's in your mind. You're seeing it in your mind. It's being projected by your mind as if it were something that was, a visual, in a light spectrum that would be visually apparent to anybody, right? Because that's the way that our mind can sort of make it work for us without breaking us. And so we're always looking, it's always looking to meet your expectation, but do it in a way that's not going to shock you out of it. And so, for us, seeing is like that. It's, we do perceive it as not just being around the person, but something that we visually see. But really, the whole process is being handled within your mind. So it makes sense to me that some people would have an easier time with that if they could train themselves to do it with their eyes closed. So,
What's the function or the role of the after image, and how do we use it in our training?
So the after image, I mean, that's, a technical thing, right? Where it's just a physiological apparition that happens when we focus on something for a while. And, the way that we utilize it is that we use it to help visualization in some degree, right? So it's like we'll take a candle and, stare at it basically, and then close our eyes and hold the candle in place in our mind's eye. And so when that candle starts to shift or change, and we're trying to hold it exactly as it was as we saw it on the table. And then when we start to lose the image, or it starts to lose its position or shifts in any way, color, all of those things, then we open our eye back up again. We look at the candle, stare at the candle again, or whatever object, and do the same process. They'll do that for, several minutes or several times, and, not to get fatigued, but everybody's a little bit different with how long they'll do it. But, usually I say, if you can do that 3 or 4 times, I mean, that's the best practical effect that I can think of for the after image. And we use it a lot to help people with visualization.
So Brian, I had a cool after image experience last week myself. We were doing the star and we were gazing at it for 4 minutes. Then I turned to the laptop here, to the camera, to talk. And about 6 inches behind the screen, behind the computer, there was that star and the after image of it. And I'd be moving around, and it was so cool because it was so real. It was so Harry Potter-esque.
Yeah. I mean, and that will happen with people. I mean, I'll bet, if nobody's asked the question, I'll bet people have had a general experience of seeing, like, when they're not gazing, when they're not doing anything, and they're doing the dishes or whatever, or they're walking around, and all of a sudden they'll see these little, we don't have a good English translation, but my teacher always called them sparks, right? Which was like, you'll all of a sudden you'll see these little, a blue dot over here, or a red dot over there, or a yellow dot, and they're like moving around. And that's just seeing energy that's generally around you. And you'll see that, when you do gazing often and more, that more of those things show up. They're not to a distraction. Obviously, you can just sort of like ignore them, let them go. But if you focus on them, they will tend to concentrate, and they'll be more and more. And then at a certain point, during your exercises, you may see, especially with exercises that involve a candle, that those will start to appear and they'll start to move toward you. And so, and that's always considered a really good thing, because it means that, like pore breathing or any of those things, right? This is a visual manifestation of energy moving toward you and moving inside your field, moving inside your body. And so adding to your own energy. So.
Cool. Brian, my sleep has become very unpredictable, waking at odd hours with trouble falling back to sleep, being highly energized at normal bedtime. How does aura gazing practice affect the sleep patterns, if at all?
Yeah. I think any energetic exercises can, affect your sleep patterns. So I would always recommend people, if you're finding that that's the case, switch up the timing if you can. Maybe, doing it too close to bedtime can actually cause your energy to move a little bit faster. And then, it's harder to get to sleep or stay asleep. So try moving the times around a little bit, and maybe not doing stuff so close to bed if that's the case. If not, I would say, like with anything with sleep, I mean, I deal a lot with sleep. And so, a good routine of the winding down is really, really what I find to be the most critical thing, because once you train your mind to start doing the same sort of relaxation and winding down stage, like I never watch screens or do any kind of work, probably an hour and a half before I go to bed. And so, and if I do, let's say I'm watching a movie or something like that, I put blue blockers on, so that I'm still in that state where I'm not awaking my mind, because so much blue comes through the screen. It's not just the flicker rate anymore. That's barely perceivable anymore, right? So, but that blue color that seems to saturate, and they know this too, right? And they use it to keep people awake and excited. But that seems to last. I mean, from the research, it looks like that lasts probably well past an hour and a half once you get into bed. So your brain is still cranking on like wakefulness, and like, okay, I got to get up and do something, or like you would first thing in the morning. And So I would say blue blockers, for one, get a really solid routine of the calming down before bed. So even if I'm reading a book, I've got my blue blockers on so that my mind and my circadian rhythms aren't interrupted. And it's really like, okay, I'm reading, but I know the sun's down and I'm getting way more of that red light that's coming in, that's telling my brain to sort of slow down and get prepared for sleep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian, the last question.
Oh.
Where do we go from here? one person asked, where is it? Should I give up? I've been practicing for 90 days and can only see auras in a controlled environment, and then not each time. What do I do?
Yeah. Well, where you go from here is, first of all, I would say this is a great place. I think in the very beginning of the program, one of the things that I mentioned was, which is the start of everything, I think, no matter what you do, it's like, what do you want? And why do you want it? Right. So if you can fill those two questions out, and that takes some time, right? Because, I mean, people don't always want to, even if nobody's going to read my journal except me, or you're going to burn the page after you write it down. People find it very difficult to write down exactly what they want. They either think they want too much, or, maybe they're not worthy, or maybe it's a fantasy or whatever. But I find it's one of the most critical things to do right from the beginning. What do you want from this? And why do you want it? When you answer those questions, it really will sort of set the course for, how far you want to go with this. I mean, if you like, there's maybe a bit of a difference in the beginning with people who, let's say, they have a healing practice, they're a massage therapist, acupuncturist, doctor, whatever. They have a true goal of using this as more information that they can use to help their diagnosis and help their remedies that they're using on people to help them get better. So they have a real driving force. They know why they want to do it, and they know what they're trying to achieve. So I feel like everybody should do that. It doesn't matter if you're a healer or not. It just matters that you want to do it, and that, set a good goal for yourself, and give yourself a time limit for it too, so that, you have some metrics there, you have some signposts along the way. Well, I'm getting good on this, but I'm having a little trouble with that. I'm going to do more of that to sort of build that up. There's so many ways to approach this, but I think it's just this, the sky's the limit, really. I mean, it's like, I don't think there's any outer edge to this that I know of. I mean, you can keep going with it and make it more malleable, to your life, right? It's like, I think, in the beginning, I usually tell people, look, just confirming that there's more here than meets the visual eye is already a huge thing, right? It sort of confirms. I mean, a lot of people do this. They already have some experience or some ideas of how they think the world is put together. And there's nothing like aura seeing that I can think of that gives you that confirmation. You don't have to prove it to anybody else. If you're using it for your own benefit and that just makes you light up, no pun intended, then it's like, that's great, right? Anything that we can be grateful for in any given moment of the day is only going to make your life better. But if you have a real concrete goal, then that's going to drive you forward. And if you know why you want that goal, that's going to make it even, give it more depth. And so, I think that that's where you go from there, figure out what you want and then move directly toward that. Every step is moving in that direction.
I remember when we were first learning the aura scene from you, Brian, one of the things that happened for me that was important, was a breakthrough. I was sitting in the conference room at the office, which we used to do, and I was thinking about the aura scene, and I noticed Deborah's aura. And I thought, oh, that's kind of nice. And then all of a sudden dawned on me, well, wait a minute. I wonder how everybody is connected. And then I could start to see the connections, and that was really cool. And that became the why for doing the auras for me, because you could see how we're all connected.
And if I recall right, too, like you had a spontaneous experience of that at a concert, which is when after that,
Oh,
we
yes.
talked, right? And so
Yes.
when the musicians on stage are all, together and their energy starts to blend, and you were viewing that and you could see that connection, how they were all sort of intertwined. And again, it's one of those sort of nice platitudes for most people. It's just an intellectual thing. Yeah, we're all connected. Okay, yeah, good. But
Oh,
when you
that's it. It's all connected. But what does it mean? You get to
but
see
when you can see it, it has a profound impact on you. It's like you just treat the world differently. Your most close relations and people you don't even know and things you don't even know. You see the interconnectedness of all things, and it just, I don't know, it opens your heart, I think, in some ways. It puts you in a state of awe, the awe that kids have, when they're learning about the world, right? When they're really young and there's nothing that's trampled them down yet, and they're just like excited about everything and they're curious about everything. I mean, it's like, I don't know, who wouldn't want to recapture that in our everyday lives? I mean, it can only make your life better. I can't see any downside to that. So yeah, that interconnectedness is a huge part of this.
And I remember, that one concert that you were just telling me about there, when she was singing, beautiful aura. And then she had a backup singer. And he was playing the fiddle or, whatever at the same time. But whenever he would sing, he would just light up completely. And then when he wasn't singing, it would come down. It was so cool to see that. And another thing, I was at a concert and it was cold Minnesota weather. It was like maybe 10, 20 below. Walking
Wow.
from the concert hall to the cars as fast as you can. You keep your head down. Oops. You keep your head down and just looking. All of a sudden, I noticed this glow down there. Like, what the heck? And the feet were glowing. I looked up and it was Chris Bodie. So, it was like the master's energy was so brilliant. It was so beautiful. And I love seeing those kind of things.
Well, it's like it's so connected to sound in some ways as well, right? Just a different type of frequency, but we can even translate, frequency from audio spectrum into a visual spectrum, right? And so they're very closely linked. So of course, when people are singing, chanting, instruments are in tune and playing and striking certain notes, and then of course the group energy together, they're going to light up because it's part of them as well, right? And it's influencing their field as well. And so we all know, how emotional music can make us, and of course, those emotions can make us expand, right? Because that's energy in motion again. And so your aura is spinning even faster, expanding more, becoming more brilliant. Both the influx of energy and the outflow of energy is expanded as well, and upgraded. So yeah, I mean, I think that those are all really good things to try out as well, right? Like, try your aura singing practice after you listen to your favorite song. That's a good way to do it, because you'll be in a different state of mind. Listen to something that's incredibly beautiful to you, like my favorite opera singer of all time, probably, a lot of people, is Pavarotti, and I can listen to him sing, and I feel my chest resonating when he's holding those pure tones and pure notes, and it's just so emotional, right? And then I'll go and do my practices and everything just pops at that point. So, getting yourself into those states, and there's lots of ways to do that, right? We relax, we can do meditation before, it's like, find a rhythm. It's almost like cross training for energy work, right? So it's like, we use all of these things that we don't always attach to, or we don't always think of as being an energetic exercise, but being part of this world, and there's a reason that there are probably very few people in the earth that don't like music of one sort or another, right? So it's a human thing, and I think it's due mostly to those vibrational levels and how they make us feel. There's very little that can stimulate our sense of emotion better than music, or more spontaneously than that. And so we can utilize that because it does put us in a different state. It does excite us and excites our energy in a way. And so then you go into your practices and you find, wow, things are just jumping out at you. So give it a try.
Good. Thank you, Brian.
Oh, you are welcome.
This has been wonderful, wonderful. It's been very fascinating course, and it continues to be fascinating as you're using it out in real life. Because I was telling the group a couple of weeks ago that one of my experiences with aura seeing, when I was at the grocery store, and all of a sudden I was spontaneously seeing auras of people. And then it was more like that, please. And you get so many little things out there. It does add a richness to your life. That's
It
very
does. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
And
you can
speaking of
utilize it.
adding,
You can utilize it for almost anything,
yeah,
to enhance any aspect of your life. So, you know, try looking at different produce or seeing
no,
different
yeah,
produce.
yeah.
That can really give you, everybody's worried about squeezing it, smelling it, doing all those, classic chef things, right? There's one that you might have over on the chefs, right? It's like see the produce and pick that way.
Yeah, I bring my dowsing rods.
Well, tell your mind, what you want, right? It's like, I want to see the produce that will give me the most benefit.
Ah,
And
yes.
then see, so you have a very specific. So every time we ask those questions of our subconscious, we're framing it, right? Because if it can do everything, right? It's infinite. So it's connected to the one, it's connected to the universe. So, and your conscious mind is sort of tamping it down to some degree so that, you don't go crazy by getting all this influence all at once, right? You can't figure it out. But if you frame it with a good question, it's so much easier to, get the results you're looking for. So I try to frame these little questions so that it knows just the parameters that I'm trying to see. And give me the information that I need to make that feedback loop connect. And when it does, and when I have that avocado that's awesome and I feel great after that, then it's like, that's confirmation, and you confirm to your subconscious that, yes, that's exactly what I was asking for, and that's exactly what you gave me. My references for the seeing you were spot on, and good. We're going to keep going with that and see what else I can do.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So, Brian, we have a very interesting thing happening in the next few months.
Mm.
The last few years, we've been working on a new course, 4 Elements Manifestation. And we kind of mentioned it a couple times over the last 90 days. Can you kind of give a view of what it is, and maybe how does it relate with what we're doing here? And why is it something that could be really important and valuable for folks?
Sure. Well, it goes a little deeper into the elements, right? So, uh, the elements play a role in almost every esoteric practice, right? Any kind of energy work, at some level, the elements come into play. Now, not everybody puts as much emphasis on it, and certain practices are a little, less involved with that. Some are more. And so, there's been so much in the last, God, when did The Secret come out? So it's like, manifesting. And before that, written word about manifesting, right? I mean, there's just a ton of stuff from the 1920s and, a lot of organizations that, got started with New Thought and all of that. And so it's not something that hasn't been around, but I always felt that a lot of things were either left sort of vague, and it was hard for people to sort of latch on to specific parts of it, or that if they were left out, because I mean, the people that sort of trounce that idea, uh, they always have the same sort of thought process in their mind, which led me to this understanding, was that people do that, and they just think about what they want, and then you know they just keep thinking about what they want, and then it's supposed to show up for them, which that doesn't work. Anybody that's tried it will tell you that that doesn't work. So you have to have these other ideas, and I found that framing that around the elements gives people a more concrete method for going after those things and helping to manifest them. And it can be anything, right? It's like, but I usually tend to find these days that people are looking for a way, to manifest new situations in their life more than things. We're sort of thinged out. And so, I mean, situation could bring other things as in subsequently, but it's not always, people's prime directive, right? So it's situations. We want to, make our relationships better or get new relationships. We want to increase our success in the world, and all the things that come along with that, good feelings about that. We want to increase our health or make it, more, and if we have certain targeted areas, we're going for that. And my primary thing has always been, a combination of those things, but basically it's like my whole goal is to get people to, embrace spirituality, but a spirituality that's comes from tradition, but transitions into something that's idiosyncratic, meaning that every person has their own. We use the principles of these traditions, many traditions, the things that work, what I've found works over the years. But the idea is that the way you layer them, the way that you put them to work in your own life, it gives people that connection. Because what I've seen in my clinics and seen from people doing talks for you, and from my students and other programs and all of this, is that they have this sense when they come in that there's something else, but they don't quite know how to get there, or even if there is something else. But they have that sense, and in the last few decades, right, we've really, probably more from like the 70s on, right, we've sort of been indoctrinated into tech, for the lack of a better thing, right? Materialism and tech. And so tech was supposed to be our big savior, much like in the 30s when pharmaceuticals were going to be our savior, right? We'll have a pill for everything. And so that fell short. And now the tech is sort of, it's the double-edged sword, right? It's a great thing. We're here now, right? This is all tech, and this is great. It's wonderful to reach a lot of people. It can also be a horrible distraction, right? And take your life away from you. And so, and my idea is that, in engaging and making these spiritual practices, energetic practices available for people, and showing them that they're not, a cult in the slang term, right? They are hidden, but they're only hidden because people have sort of suppressed them for a long time. And now we have so many manuscripts translated. I mean, the information is just, now it's an overwhelming amount of information. So I act more as a curator, probably, of information, and a translator into common language. And so we wanted to do with this program, which the reason that it's taken quite a few years to get it going is because it's hard. It's hard on my end to translate, because when I first brought this up, it's like I had no idea that, the luxury that I had teaching mostly students that already had a background. And so we were already on semi-common footing, right? And so to go from scratch and relate this in a way that would be understandable for people and that they could utilize it has taken some time. But that's the idea, is that using the elements as a base, understanding them within yourself and in the world, and using specific exercises to acclimate yourself to them, and seeing how that changes you. And in that change, it changes your situation, right? And hopefully, if we do the what do we want, why do we want it, as honestly and as thoroughly as possible, it gives you nice steps to move yourself into that place that you want. And so, but identifying it first is the common theme, right? And understanding why you want to be there just for yourself. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. That's crucial. And then the steps make really good sense after that, I think. And it's a, you know, I think we've really done a good job at not leaving any gaps. And I really, I don't think I've ever done a program or have tried to build a program that was so, that didn't leave any gaps, that really got people to transition from one thing to the next. And also in doing that, truly the journey is as good as the destination. And that's another platitude that I never really got. I mean, the journey's great, no problem. Smell the roses, do all those things, but it's like to really say that the journey is just as good, and there'll be so many surprises and revelations and accomplishments on the people that do it. You know, the getting to the destination is just going to be, you know, frosting on the cake, basically. So, and it's not a one-time, it's not a one-off, right? It's like you can use this for every aspect in your life. You know, maybe it is just a thing that you want. Okay, well then, you know, then you really get good at the techniques, and you can utilize it for many other things in your life, really almost anything. It's going to change people on a fundamental level. And as much as aura seeing can change your understanding and open you up to the connections of people and the more you know, underlying, let's say, energetic architecture that people are, you know, I think the 4 Elements Manifestation course shows that in a world context and, you know, in a situational context for each individual. But then you're going to project that out into the world, and it's going to become part of that world. And so for me, I mean, that's been my driving goal for a long time, is to sort of bring back a spirituality that, much like we read about in ancient Egypt, in ancient Greece, you know, where the gods walked among us and anybody could interact with them and anybody could engage those energies in a way that was personal for them. I think that that's, you know, that's really the driving force in my life at this point.
Neat. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you know, Brian, when we first started talking about this course, how many years ago, we ended up presenting it as a live teleseminar series. It was 29 weeks, 90 minutes a week, and it was extraordinary. And then when it came time to take this and how do we put it into a recorded course, and to see, because we had so many ahas when we were going through the program, and to see how everything does fit in and how do we make that easier for everybody. What sold me on the course in the first place was during a call that we had, when you said that the problem with so much of the manifestation stuff is all in your head. You know, visualization and all that. It's all the energetic, but you have to figure out how to bring it into physical form. And that's what the elements do. And that's what we learned through aura seeing, is that it is elemental. I mean, it is energetic,
Yes.
but each one represents something in physical. So it helps bring everything into real life. And I think that is just unbelievably beautiful. And that's everything from dealing with your emotions and situations that are in your life to, I mean, any aspect of your life is being covered in the course. Like you said, there are no gaps in it. It was like the Oracene course at the beginning of the 90-day programs. I said, when you have questions, what do? Go back to the manual, go back to the recordings, because all the answers are there, because the course is so well constructed.
Right.
This new course is unbelievably constructed too. I mean, our team that has been working on it with you, it is just absolutely amazing. So I can't wait to see how people end up using it. And the meditations, especially the meditations, can you kind of just give a sneak preview into like what one of the meditations are, like going to the fire planet?
Yeah, sure. So we do these meditations. Now, I know in the Oracene course, we used an elemental meditation that combined all the elements. Well, we try to work on the elements in the elemental manifestation course, more individually. So it's like you're taking each element to the gym, right? And so one of the ways, because there are a number of ways that we do this, is through a meditation practice going to the elemental planet. And so there's quite a long relaxation process. And then each time you move through a different territory, you're sort of releasing other types of physical stressors or things of that nature to sort of bring up that element within you so that it can engage, because one of the prime principles is like speaks to like, right? And so, if I want to engage with fire, then I need to become fire. And so, and all the attributes that go along with that. And so, in engaging them on their territory, that we sort of encompass, because we have to do that, we have to give it a frame or a container, is this planet in space that is, let's say, a fire planet. So it only is the fire element on that planet. So all of the things that are on there, all of the things, the flora, the fauna, all of the experiences are some aspect of fire. And by engaging your senses and your imaginal sense in that way, it gives you a much more intimate view of fire, and not just a view, but a visceral sensation, just like you were saying before, because it's so important. And this is where a lot of spiritual traditions, at least the modern ones, let's say, tend to lack, as they stay in their head, right? And they sort of deny the physical body, deny from this world, and kind of move in that direction. And as a hermeticist, I can say that one of the reasons that things don't always work out for people is because they're not grounding it in themselves. They're not bringing it. They're not using something to bring it out and up in themselves to make themselves more like what they want, right? So it's a different type of mindset, right? So the idea for us is, if like speaks to like, and we can take that and we'll even temporarily say we're going to go with that, then if I want a new situation, the reason I don't have that situation right now is because I don't occupy, I don't have the configuration energetically to put myself in that place. So the only way for me to actually get to that new situation is to make myself like that situation. And one of the easiest ways to make those transfers is through the elements. And so, and because each element occupies, certain correspondences and occupies, places in your body, some are going to be less, some are going to be more. You're going to have a natural inclination to be, just like we had with one of the first questions, right? They liked fire and spirit. There's going to be a strength there for them. And in that, but the idea is that when we work on those, that momentum you're going to be able to transfer through into the other elements to bring them up as well, to make not just a balance, because we're not looking for, 25% in each of the elements, right? That would just be boring, right? So it's almost like a fingerprint, right? So every situation, you're going to need to have a elemental fingerprint for that situation, and it's going to shift and change. So the idea is to bring them all up into your body so that you can manipulate them, articulate them in a way that's going to produce in yourself the situation within you, so that what you want to move into, what you want, is inevitable, because you're already that architecture energetically. And so it would be easier to, it would be harder to understand why you weren't in that situation once you bring that up in yourself. It's almost like it's an automatic thing. So instead of everybody that tries to manifest, they're trying to produce something outside of themselves. But from my experience, the proper way to do it is to manifest it inside of yourself and then step into that. I feel that that's a much stronger and more consistent way for anybody to move into a new situation, or to get what you want in this life. So it's a little bit different approach, but I really wholeheartedly think that with what we've done, that literally anybody could utilize that. And so, I don't think that there's not even a lot of, aura seeing is a stretch, right? For a lot of people, it's like, you're going to see colors around, energy around people. And, it's great. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. But I just feel, we're made of the elements. We have our physical bodies, our environment, everything here is made of elements. And so, we have the perfect vehicle, both body and mind, to deal with this. It's just, you needed some specific direction. That's all. And the motivation to do it. Once you start, you're not going to need me to cheerlead you on. You're going to be so excited to be in that and having things change around you. Sometimes the change is the thing that we have to slow down, right? Because it's like, it's too much too fast. So, but that's not a bad problem to have.
And the program is very systematic, and you say it's not a stretch. Oh, it's a stretch, but it's a stretch in a good way. But one of the really cool things is that you'll go from one audio session, and when you go into the next audio session, it's kind of like you're on a different planet altogether, or a different world, because there's so many different ideas,
Right.
And each one is a surprise. And it's like, my goodness, where did this come from? But it all works beautifully together, and it's structured so that you can go through it and then come back into any aspects of it whenever you'd like. And I think that the way that we're putting the manual together, the way that we're doing the indexing and all that kind of stuff, is going to be so easy to remember what's in the course, because it is comprehensive, but that way you can go back to it anytime, and it will start to play automatically in your life. I'm just thrilled for it. I can't wait for it to come out.
I know, it's we're getting close, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's been quite a journey for me.
We were pretty close 2 years ago, Brian.
Well, it's been quite a journey for me as well. Just to be able to force myself to sit down and go through everything from the beginning, as if I were teaching somebody that had no idea, what was going on. And that really is quite an effort when you've been doing it for a very long time. And
well, the good news is you're in the studio now. We're doing the recordings. I think the 4 brand new paraliminals that were designed for the course, those have been done. The how many meditations? 6, 7, or 8?
Oh God, there's way more than that, actually.
Oh, that's right, there is. And some of them, the planet meditations are just so cool.
Right.
And the composer who did the music for us, he does scores for films. So the music that's in it will bring you into the experience of water, of fire. It's just beautifully done.
Well, and that's that sound element, right? So it like brings that emotional aspect in there. It's like you're feeling it while you're there. It's not just some, visualization exercise in your
You're
head.
feeling,
You're
yeah,
actually
you're bringing it
feeling.
into yourself, yeah. And my favorite meditation, of course, is the open focus, which is the end of the program. Don't jump ahead. Wait, go through the process there, but you're going to love it. I've done it so many times since we first learned it years ago. I
Right.
love it. And you haven't recorded it yet, have you?
No,
No.
not for
So I
this.
haven't heard the new version of it, but I used the old version for the teleseminar series that we
Right.
did.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
Brian,
there's just so many aspects of it, right? It's like, and I think the other part that's really unique is that because there are so many moving parts, that people will naturally, sort of be inclined to certain ones and build them out even stronger than what is required for the course. And any one of those parts is such a valuable tool in and of itself that you can utilize it to do other things, even outside of this manifestation process, right? So like the Lectio Divina and, all of these other
yeah,
types of exercises. So it's fascinating, and really, I really feel like looking back on it, I was doing a review today and I thought, every single one of these could be taken out of context and put into practice toward something else in a person's life. And I felt so good about it because that follows with what I'm trying to do in general, which is bring, personal spirituality back to this place and back to our communities, our society, right? Because that's something, no matter what turns in this world, physically, materially, whatever, that's something that can never be taken away. When you walk in that grace every day, it's like, yeah, you can fall prey to this, that, the other thing. You can, have great heights and all this, but that's constantly with you. And I don't think there's anything more valuable than that.
Sweet universe.
It is.
Brian, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for creating all the programs and all that, but I so much appreciate your time and going through the questions and answering them and sharing your wisdom. I mean, it's just so neat. I'm so happy that you're part of our family bringing this stuff out. It is so cool because every time I have a conversation with you, I'm surprised. Because there's always, oh my goodness, there's always a different way to look at something. And it just really does enhance your life. And I know that's why so many people go through the programs, because it's like a hobby that really, it just has so many benefits to it. So
it really does.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I always enjoy these question and answer sessions, and I love learning strategies. It's like I've utilized stuff from you guys before we ever met, and so and I got great value out of that. And I have, I can get whatever resources I need, and I still find, the paraliminals. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? I mean, there's just so many things, and I think you guys have just done such a great service to the world, and I'm happy to be part of it in whatever small way I can.
Thank you. We work well together.
Yes, we do.
Oh, speaking of which, you have a meditation. You've done a version of the dragon meditation for the pandemic. You're going to send me a link to it, and I'll put it in the Oracene Practice Group Facebook page so that folks can go to that page and then use that meditation.
Great. And if they want to send it to their friends or they have loved ones that they want to use it, I mean, I put it on our site for free, so you can just go to the site and, download it and you're good to go.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it. And especially for those who did the full 90 days. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. That's awesome.
This is what we did.
That's it.
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya.